this music to start today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Wow. Bing bong, Tom.
Bing bong.
Good to see you this morning. Hello and welcome to Three Big Things. This is a CineBoys, but not the CineBoys podcast, part of the Korked podcast network. I'm Kenny from Korked, head boy of the CineBoys podcast. And Three Big Things is a podcast where I sit down with a guest or guests. Today's just one guest for an in-depth discussion on specific movies and TV shows. Why is it called Three Big Things? Well, that's simple. We're going to give you three big things, sometimes more, that we think make this movie or TV show special or not so special. And warning, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. And, you know, really for this one, I don't think we need the warning because the movie is almost, I think it's 35 years old.
35 years old, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's on you at this point. Like, if you don't know, granted, this is actually the first time I'd ever watched the film. So maybe you're saving it like I was. But yeah, part of Korkbat's Jean-Claude Van Damuary, we're going to be highlighting a few great Jean-Claude Van Damme movies this month. And we're going to start with probably, I mean, I think you could probably make an argument for it being his most like notable one, or at least I feel like one of the ones where when you think Jean-Claude Van Damme, you think Bloodsport.
Time Cop. Bloodsport.
Yeah. Time Cop. I will say we are going to do one on Time Cop, and I don't know if that's one of his more popular ones, but I think it's one of the only ones that I had previously seen from start to finish.
Right. Yeah, whenever I watched Bloodsport last night, I realized I'd never seen it before. And then I started thinking, I don't know if I've actually seen any of his like all the way through in its entirety.
Right.
Like, I don't even know if I've seen Time Cop. I've never seen Universal Soldier. Yeah, so I don't even know if I could say that I'm like a fan of Jean-Claude, but we'll see after this month.
I will honestly admit I'm not big on the film library of Jean-Claude Van Damme personally. Like he was never one of those guys that like I was like, ooh, new Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, gotta see it.
Right.
Like that was more reserved for people like Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Yeah.
So out of that time bubble genre of type of film, he was kind of like third on the list and just never really got into any of it other than Street Fighter. I mean, I don't think Street Fighter. Street Fighter was a little different because it was like video game movie in the 90s when I'm a kid.
Right.
Duh, it's going to be amazing. But yeah, so if you haven't guessed already, this week we're discussing Bloodsport, and I'm going to be joined by one of my other fellow CineBoys, Mr. Tom. Tom, how are you?
I'm great, Ken. How are you?
I'm great, man. I know it's going to be pretty cold up there, up north where you're at today.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's pretty cold here in Texas, actually. We're on the verge of getting an ice storm, which will shut us down for a week. That's just how it works. So anyways, again, we're going to talk about Bloodsport. And if you're not familiar with Bloodsport, let me just pull up some of the information on it real quick. But Bloodsport obviously is a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. It is directed by Newt Arnold. Never heard of him. But congratulations to Newt Arnold on directing Bloodsport. It is, we'll get into this here because it's one of our big things, but it is based on a true story, which we will talk about. And yeah, Bloodsport follows Frank Dukes, an American martial artist serving in the military who decides to leave the army to compete in a martial arts tournament in Hong Kong where fights to the death can occur. It's not like a fight to the death, but if it happens, it happens, you know?
Yeah.
We're not going to...
It's like Rocky IV. If he dies, he dies.
He dies, he dies. I don't believe... I can't remember. I could be wrong. Does somebody die in Bloodsport?
Like 3 or 4 people.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
Like Chung-Li, like the big bad guy, he kills like at least 2 on screen, I think.
I didn't know he was like killing them. Maybe they didn't do a good job of explaining that. Well, here's a thing about Bloodsport that's not really a big thing, but I'll just kind of talk about like my memories growing up. So again, we talked about how Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't really didn't see a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies growing up personally. And Jean-Claude Van Damme movies were typically those movies when I would go to the video rental store that were rated R, so I couldn't get them. And so, especially with this movie, I had in my head, like, this movie's got to be so dark. It's got to be so violent that it would get
Mm-hmm.
R rating.
No,
And, like, honestly, this movie's pretty tame.
there's very little blood in it, actually,
Yeah.
despite the name being Bloodsport.
It's not super there's only, like, one scene I remember where a guy gets his, like, limb broken that was kinda
Oh yeah,
graphic,
yeah, that was disgusting.
but it looked fake, and,
Yeah,
like, it didn't really hit with, like, "Oh my god, this is so violent."
yeah, at
Yeah,
least not today, anyway.
yeah, so it's slapped with an R rating, but or I think it's rated R. Anyways, so it's like one of those movies I would walk past in the video store growing up, and I would think, "Yeah, that's gotta be rough."
Yeah. Did you ever at that time? Because this is something I would do. Like you would see it, you'd see the R rating, and you get excited because it's just like, oh, I gotta watch that. And then you like make a mental checklist of, all right, when I'm of age, this is going on my list of things to watch.
Yes, yes,
I did that all the
absolutely.
time.
Yeah, I can't wait till I'm old enough to rent that because 'cause it's
Yes.
gotta be so cool. Um, so yeah, I am gonna just go ahead real quick and play a portion of the trailer, um,
Nice.
just so get this in theater mode there, just so people know, kinda have a context of what we're gonna be talking about today if you've never seen the film. So give me just 1 second here. There we go. Bloodsport.
For centuries, the Society of the Black Dragon has sanctioned an ancient rite of combat, known as the Kumite, open only to the world's most lethal warriors.
I do real quick, I do miss the art of, like, movie trailer
Trailers. Oh yeah.
narration.
Yes.
You don't get that
100%.
anymore. Nobody
No,
does that
and I
anymore.
wish because like this voice, I don't know if it's the same guy that we are accustomed to hearing, but like that voice is just like pretty iconic from our growing up.
I think it's Don LaFontaine, is that his name?
Don LaFontaine.
Maybe.
That sounds right, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
It has never been won by a Westerner.
You are not Japanese. I can do it.
Now, for the first time, the true story of America's super agent, Frank Dukes.
We're kind of fast and loose with the Westerner US agent.
Yeah. Well, I think in the movie they do talk about how his family moved to the US and
Yeah.
like became citizens. So
Okay.
yeah.
We'll discuss that. I must have missed that.
Can be revealed.
Uncle Sam can't afford to let you get hurt.
I'm going to Hong Kong.
Frank is going to fight in the Kumite, and we're here to stop him.
An awesome human weapon
It hurts me just looking at it.
who infiltrates the Chinese underworld
I did not come this far to stop now.
Take him.
to enter a forbidden competition.
Couldn't you just get me in?
Strict rules, no press.
You telling me you never break rules?
Where every fighting style, every worthy opponent, every deadly technique clash in savage combat,
Time to separate the men from the boys.
and only one will triumph.
Now I will break you.
International martial arts sensation Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport.
So there you go. There's the
Gosh,
trailer.
that music gets me so amped. I
pretty-
love 80s soundtracks.
Yeah, it's pretty good. As far as like soundtracks go, this movie's pretty good. It definitely has like a good kind of vibe, 80s music vibe. There are a few of those like weird 80s ballads thrown in there too
Yeah.
that like probably don't fit very well, but hell, we're just gonna
No.
throw them in anyways. So yeah, so let's get into it. Like I said, we've got three big things we kind of want to discuss, and we're gonna get through those and just kind of talk about the movie. Again, there's spoilers, deal with it. So yeah, our first big thing on Bloodsport is this is based on a true story.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Um I didn't do a ton of digging into this. All I can say is I call bullshit. Like, there's
Yeah.
no way that this movie happened the way that like it's told. Like, there's just no
Oh,
way.
not at all. Not at all. Like I've done a little bit of reading on it. Like I was watching the movie last night, I was reading up on some trivia and also just like things I've heard in the past about it. It's just like, so Frank Dukes is a real person and he actually worked on this movie to help get it made. And like he trained Jean-Claude in like his own personal style of martial arts. So that stuff is real, but Kumite is not real. Like after like decades, people have kind of started to like realize, wait, this stuff is like made up. Like this guy lied his way into Hollywood essentially. It's like Kumite, like the stats that they give at the end of him, like fighting in Hong Kong for 5 years, like 329 matches won, like KOs, all this stuff. Like that's all fake. Like none of that is real. They've determined. But like I guess there's like a story that like people would go to like his house, like Frank Dukes' house, and he'd have this like trophy room, just of all these trophies from like the tournament wins and whatnot. But I think what became of this is that he would like go buy these trophies like a few counties over at some trophy store and it would just like have them make these trophies and he would just store them.
I love that.
Now that's an alleged story. I don't know how real that is, but like that's just one of the many like tales of this fabrication that I've heard. So
yeah, that reminds me of this like trophy for my job that we had that was supposed to be passed around, and I ended up just keeping it. And like, I still have it to this day. It's on my desk at work where it just says like, "Hey, consultant of the month" or whatever. And it's like, not really, but here you go.
yeah, doubt it, but okay.
It's a good move. I like that
Yeah.
move. Yeah, and the other thing I was
Yeah.
gonna say too, like even if let's say this movie, like the story is true, like there's no way in hell that this happened the way that this movie portrays it. The
No.
movie is so just like Hollywood to a T of like, well, he needs to be trained like, and this is like also very 80s, 90s kind of vibe. He needs to be trained by somebody from Japan.
Yeah.
And he's got his training there. He goes to fight. He makes a really good friend who's
Yeah.
also American.
Yeah.
He has a love interest who happens to be a journalist trying to get the scoop on the Kumite.
Yeah.
He's being tracked by federal agents. Like, okay, this is
Yeah.
like very much a like somebody wrote this movie.
Very formulaic.
Yeah.
Like it had that specific formula at that time period of like action movies of just point A, B, C, D, and then
Yeah. So when it says based on a true story, and even at the end of the movie, it gives like a shout out to Frank Dukes, and it's like, like I just feel like this isn't what happened.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It's too it's too structured.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
Yeah. So that's kind of our first big thing. Based on a true story?
Question mark?
So one of the other big things that we were kind of talking about before we got into the podcast is just, the movie in general. And I think we would both agree that our second big thing is some of the choices made throughout this movie are absolutely baffling.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
Or just about like, so there's that scene where he goes to visit his, he didn't call him sensei. I forget what word he uses. Like
Shitoshi.
Shitoshi?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Mr. Takana is his name. But he goes to visit him because I guess he's ill, and he walks in the door and he sees the katana sitting by the fireplace or whatever. And he goes on like this 30-minute flashback that like we end up forgetting that it's a flashback at different points because of how long it is.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, it gives like some backstory, which is necessary. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have any idea like what this guy's connection to this family is. So that helps in that respect. But you really could have cut out a lot of those pieces, I think.
Right. It's so long to a degree where I even wrote a note where I said, is the flashback still happening? Because then part of me was like, oh, no, he just came to get training before he goes to the Kumite. And then you realize, oh, no, it was just like a 30-minute flashback.
Yeah.
and he's still just standing there
staring
at this sword. So yeah, and then within that flashback, there's a lot of, for me, and like I think you might have mentioned that they do explain this, and maybe I just forgot it. So Jean-Claude Van Damme's character is supposed to be an American. I think he's in the army, or he might be some sort of like special forces guy, and like
I guess I don't know.
Clearly not American,
right?
And then they have the kid, like when they're doing the flashback, the kid version of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he is terrible, like just awful.
Did they tell him to try to act like Jean-Claude and like try to do his voice? Because that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, that's my theory.
Terrible.
Maybe the kid also is foreign, and like that's what they went with, and like obviously if you don't have a ton of training and you're just like read the line, that's probably what it's going to sound like. But I'm with you. It feels more like they got this kid who is American and are like, hey, do a Jean-Claude Van Damme impression for all your scenes.
And it was so bad, like it looked dubbed at different points.
Yes. Like it feels like a foreign film, especially like through the first probably 20, 30 minutes of the movie. Everyone is ADR. So like everybody is basically going over their lines, like recording their lines in a studio, and then they're putting that into the movie, and you can tell it. So like even like you see it a lot with movies at this time period where people may have like a really thick accent. And of course there are plenty of people in this movie who probably do have thick accents, but they're doing it on people, like using ADR on people who are clearly American. Like whenever they're in the military base, kind of at the beginning when Frank's about to escape and go to the Kumite, like they've overdubbed like everybody he talks to. And so I'm like,
it's just like, why?
It feels like a foreign language film that's been overdubbed.
Yeah.
And there's no need for it. Yeah.
But so, I just, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, I've already forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, cool. But yeah, some of these choices just don't make sense. The other big choice that they decide to make is adding in the love interest, which I forget her name at this point. And she's just a journalist trying to find out more about the Kumite. The scene where she infiltrates and like gets one of the gambling guys to bring her in as his date. There's a scene where she's like watching it, and then she just like pulls out a voice recorder in front of everybody.
Yeah. It's like everyone can see you.
Yeah. Clearly you're a journalist, and there are no journalists allowed here.
Right. But also, what good is that recording going to be if like everyone around you is shouting and cheering?
Yeah. And she's like trying to whisper into it to be like,
just Chung Lee.
Yeah. There's a few more things. Forrest Whitaker's character. So Forrest Whitaker's in the movie, which is great.
Yeah,
that was a fun surprise.
No idea.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah.
But I guess
I forget how long he's really been around.
Yeah. I guess there's him and I forget the other actor's name, but they're cops or like special agents. And essentially their whole purpose throughout the movie is they have gone to Hong Kong after Jean-Claude Van Damme to chase him and bring him back to the US.
Yeah.
But one, they're not very good at their jobs. Like they're kind of idiots. Yeah. Two, they're really too nice.
Yeah.
Like really, really nice. Like they don't like, they're like, come on, Frank, we got to go home. No.
Yeah. Come on, buddy.
All right.
All right.
And then there's the whole chase scene that like somebody turned into a Mentos commercial.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
I saw that a few months ago and I was dying laughing.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah. He's like, it's very playful. Like, it's not like him like, oh, I got to get out of here. He's like, I'm going to mess with these guys a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it works, but that's the choice they made.
I don't think it works now, but maybe in 1988, it works just fine.
Yeah. Maybe it was like one of those decisions where it's like, hey, we need like a little bit of levity in this dark movie.
Yeah.
It's not that dark.
Yes.
Kind of.
I think what would have really changed it had they not used a song that actually had lyrics.
Yeah.
They'd use like an actual chase theme.
That is very 80s though. Is like, hey, here's a good point for like somebody's original song. He's running from the cops. Hey, you wrote a song. You want to play it for the movie? Great. Here we go.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then like at the end of the movie, so like as Jean-Claude Van Damme is being chased by these cops, he's very much like, hey, look, I'm coming back with you guys. Don't worry. I'm just not coming back right now. Let me finish this tournament. And they're like, no, you need to come back with us now. And they pull out these like, they don't have guns. They have these like tasers,
which is another interesting choice.
that look like, they reminded me of like the like speed guns that cops use to, like, track
The
how
radar
fast.
gun. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I had no idea that they were tasers until they said something like, we're gonna put 50,000 volts
We're
in
gonna
you.
clock your speed.
Yeah. So don't have guns. So I guess they're not like real agents. Well, I don't know. I guess they didn't want to shoot them because all they're trying to do is bring them back to the US.
It's true. It just seemed like a funny choice.
Yeah. And then eventually that storyline gets to a point where they meet him at like the final round of Kumite and they're like, hey, we got you. You're coming back. And he's like, no, you need to let me finish this. And they're basically like, all right.
All right.
They get so easily. And then they're friends with him and they go and sit and watch the Kumite and they're cheering for him like as fans. And it's
right.
Yeah. Weird choice.
The only thing I could think of for, I don't know about Forrest Whitaker's character, but the other guy who I'm blanking on his name, he looked like he was probably close to retirement anyway. So he's just like, what's it gonna hurt? One more day.
Yeah.
Just have it. Have at it.
Yeah, that actor's name is Norman Burton. He played Helmer. Helmer is the character's name.
Helmer
and Rollins are two agents. So yeah, and then at the end of the movie, he's like, "Yeah, I'll see you at the plane tomorrow. We'll go." And then they're standing there at the plane waiting for him. They're like, "I guess he's not going to show." And then somehow he's already on top of the staircase to the plane. He's like, "Come on, guys!" And it's very much like, Frank.
Oh gosh.
Oh, yeah. Frank. And it's like, is he under arrest? Like, what is happening?
What's your purpose here?
Yeah, I did not really understand that whole storyline as to, I guess the stakes seemed very low to me.
Yeah.
Apparently they were low to them.
If he comes back, cool, but if not, we tried.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, and then it's like, so what happens after that? Is he under arrest or is it just taking him back?
I don't know, because as far as I'm aware, if you desert the military, that's a big crime.
That's a pretty big deal. That's like court-martial shit. You're gonna get in trouble.
So I don't think that would go well, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. So yeah, again, just the choices that this movie makes. Yeah, it's baffling. And then I think that kind of brings us to our third and final big thing. And that is, both of us saw this movie for the first time this week. I had never seen it. You'd never seen it, at least all the way through. And I feel like just given our age and growing up kind of mostly in the 90s, but also thrown in there's like late 80s action movies. I feel like a lot of those movies I look back with kind of like rose-colored glasses and like through a nostalgia lens, and I love them no matter what. Like even when I go back and revisit a lot of those movies, I know it's like, yeah, this isn't great, but I still love this
I'm
movie.
having so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Bloodsport didn't have that because I never saw it.
Right.
And so for me, I was like, this movie is dog shit. Like there was at no point where I was like, there were a few points where I was laughing really hard.
Yes.
Because it was so absurd.
It was so bad.
At no point was I like, I enjoy this movie. Like
I think I agree with you for the most part, but I think I still did enjoy it just because of how absurd it was and just over the top 80s action. It for sure is a terrible movie, but I did have a lot of fun watching it just because of just the ridiculousness of it and the weird choices they made. It's just this movie is hilarious. And I know it's not supposed to be,
right,
but it is because of the time that's gone by and just the weird choices that they made to tell this story. It's just oh man, this is hilarious. I'm having such a fun time.
Yeah, and it's I always want to be careful because I understand that people hold this movie in reverence.
Yes,
maybe not because they think it's a very good movie, but because they did grow up with it and they I hear people say Kumite, people wearing like, Bloodsport shirts, like all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
people love
Yeah.
Bloodsport. And again, I do
And
think it is
yeah.
that quintessential Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Like when you think of
Yeah.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, this is the movie that comes to mind.
Right.
And if
And
you
it's
grow
like,
up with, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, well, it's like I've got the same thing. Like you tell me that you're talking about Commando. Like I freaking love Commando. I'll watch that any day of the week and like have just a ball watching it.
Yep.
But I also know it's like, oh, that's kind of a dumb movie.
Yeah.
Like compared to like movies these days, it's just like it's pretty terrible. But I love it so much.
I think, yeah. So with Commando, that was a movie that I have that nostalgia love for
Same.
because I grew up with it. I adore Commando. And yeah, I agree. Not a good movie, but it is a movie. And I think the difference here is Commando is the kind of movie where I can sit and watch it by myself and still enjoy it.
Yeah.
I love watching Commando with people. It does make it more fun, but just because I have such a, there's a place in my heart for Commando, I can just like
Oh, yeah.
put it on and watch it and I'm going to like it. Where
Yeah.
Bloodsport, the other night when I was watching it by myself, I was like, this is a waste of 90 minutes. Like, obviously, we're doing the podcast, so I need to watch it and we need to have that conversation. But, like, if I were watching this for any other reason, like, hey, I've never seen Bloodsport, I'm going to put it on, I would have stopped watching within 20 minutes because the whole
Right.
flashback scene and just all that stuff, I've just been like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I don't want to finish this movie.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely see it in, kind of the same way how I feel about a movie like Commando. Somebody feels the same way about Bloodsport. Totally get that. But not having the benefit of this movie being a part of my life, it's rough. It's a hard watch. And I really wish that we could have watched it together. I feel like that would have made it a lot better.
That would have enhanced it for sure.
Yeah. So I would say, just to kind of wrap it up, like, typically at this point I ask, would you recommend this movie? And I'll say this. No, I would not recommend this movie unless you grew up with it and you love it and you just want to spend a Sunday afternoon now that football's almost over. We're getting into that springtime where, football's not on. Springtime seems like a good time to revisit old movies in the afternoon, like on a Sunday. I don't know about anybody else, but it's like, yeah, it's a good time to do it. I'd recommend it if you grew up with this movie and just want to rewatch it, go for it. Or if you're like, hey, I've never seen it before, watch it with a friend. It will be enjoyable that way. This is not a movie, if you've never seen it and you don't have a friend to watch it with, no, it's just, it's not worth your time.
Yeah.
You're just going to waste an hour and a half. So that being said, Tom, would you recommend this movie?
I think I agree with you. To like your average like film goer who had never seen it, probably not.
Yeah.
But again, if it's one that like you grew up with, or even if like you grew up adjacent to it, like to me, like I did enjoy my experience watching it, but I think that's because I hold like that whole era of action movie, like with rose-colored glasses and with nostalgia. So if like you're someone that's like me and like appreciates that kind of thing, even if you have never seen it, I think I would. But if you're not into that at all, then no, not at all.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'd recommend it with some caveats.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. So yeah, that's Bloodsport, and those are our three big things on it. I don't know. We might get a little bit of blowback on this one because like I said, it's Jean-Claude Van Damuary. We're going to be posting probably some clips to social media. I think people are going to push back on it a little bit, which is fine. Understandable.
That's great.
Yeah. But we've got a few more movies coming up this month that we're going to talk about. So that was our first one. We're also going to be discussing, like we mentioned, Time Cop, Sudden Death, and also Double Team, which Bloodsport, we started strong. I don't know if it's going to get better. I do love Sudden Death.
I've never seen it.
Okay. So Sudden Death, I saw it on TV when I was a kid, and the premise of that seemed really cool to me. So that could be a fun one to revisit. Time Cop, obviously weird, but I don't know. I don't think we're going to get more, like, as far as like well-known Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, I don't think we're going to get into any more super well-known ones, or at least ones that like Bloodsport is the quintessential Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, essentially. But I think it's going to be really fun, and we'll have some fun guests to talk about those movies with. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast, of course. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. You can also watch our videos on demand on the Korked Bats YouTube page, which is simple: youtube.com/KorkedBats. And then we are the CineBoys. We're part of the Korked Bats podcast network. So be sure to check out KorkedBats.com. Follow Korked Bats on Twitter and Instagram, and of course, you can follow the CineBoys at the CineBoys on Twitter and Instagram as well. And it's not Twitter, it's X. I know I need to get better at doing that. And I know it switched over on my phone. It's no longer Twitter, it says X. But man, what a stupid fucking name.
I hate it.
I hate it so much.
Why'd you have to change the name?
Oh, it's so dumb. Anyways, Tom, you got anything else you want to get off your chest before we go?
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. This is going to come out on Monday, so we'll know by then. But yeah, go Chiefs. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Oh. That's like a dance move.
Nice.